The plate shattered against the floor before Folasade even understood why her hand was shaking. "You will not raise your voice at me in my own house," she said, staring at the woman who had barged into her kitchen like she owned it. Iyabo didn't flinch. She stepped over the broken pieces, her wrapper sweeping the tiles. "Your house? So this is how it is now. My son buys you a car and suddenly you own everything, Abi?" "Nobody said." "I raised that boy alone." Iyabo's voice cracked through the kitchen like thunder. "I sold my wrapper, my gold, everything so he could go to school. And now you sit in his car, in his house, and you dare to raise your voice at me?" Folasade's chest rose and fell. She wanted to scream, wanted to walk out, wanted to remind this woman that respect moved in both directions. Instead, she pressed her palm flat against the counter and breathed. "Mama," she said, softer now, "I am not your enemy." Iyabo scoffed and turned away, muttering something in Yoruba that Folasade didn't need translated to understand the venom in it. If you're already feeling the tension in your chest, drop a comment and let me know. And don't forget to hit subscribe because this story only gets heavier from here. 3 years earlier, Folasade would have laughed if anyone told her she'd fall for a job applicant. She sat behind her glass desk on the 14th floor of her company, flipping through another interview file, already bored. Rich men bored her. Poor men trying to look rich bored her more. She had built her business from nothing, clawed her way past men who doubted her, and she had learned one truth the hard way. Everyone wanted something. Then Chibuike walked in. He wore a shirt that was clearly been ironed at home, not by a dry cleaner. His shoes were polished but old. He sat across from her, hands folded, and when she asked him why she should hire him over the other 12 candidates, he didn't recite a rehearsed answer. "Because I've been rejected 43 times this year," he said plainly, "and every time I went back home, ironed my shirt again, and returned the next morning. If you hire me, I will bring that same hunger here. If you don't, I will still wake up tomorrow and try somewhere else." Folasade blinked. Nobody talked to her like that. Nobody was that honest, that unguarded. "You are hired," she said before she could stop herself. Months passed. Chibuike worked harder than anyone in the building. He stayed late, asked questions, never once looked at her the way men usually looked at a woman with money. One evening, long after the office had emptied, she found him still at his desk, sleeves rolled up, eyes tired. "Go home, Chibuike," she said. "I will," he said, not looking up. "After I finish this." She sat across from him instead. "You don't have to prove yourself every single day." He looked up then, and something in his eyes made her breath catch. "I do," he said, "because men like me don't get many chances, and I don't intend to waste this one." She didn't know when she stood or when he stood too, but suddenly they were close enough that she could hear him breathing. His hand found her waist, hesitant, like he expected her to pull away. She didn't. Their lips met, slow and searching, years of guarded walls collapsing between them. She kissed him like she'd been waiting her whole life to stop being strong for one moment. He kissed him like he couldn't believe his hunger had led him somewhere this soft. When they finally pulled apart, foreheads pressed together, she whispered, "This changes everything." He said, "I know. I'm not scared." If your heart is racing right now, smash that like button because this love story is about to be tested in ways neither of them expected. They married quietly, just the two of them and a pastor, 6 months later. No lavish hall, no hundreds of guests, just her hand in his, trembling with joy she never let herself believe she deserved. But 2 weeks after their private wedding, Chibuike came home glowing, keys jingling in his palm. "Close your eyes," he said. "Haha, Chibuike, what have you done? Just close them." He led her outside, and when she opened her eyes, a car sat gleaming in the driveway, not the flashiest, but paid for entirely with his own hard-earned money. "I wanted you to have something that was ours, not from your company, from me." Tears filled her eyes as she pulled out her phone to record the moment, her voice breaking as she said, "This is what real love looks like, not the price tag, the person behind it." She didn't know that 3 days later, that same car would become the reason her mother-in-law declared war on her. Subscribe now so you don't miss what happens next, because Iyabo is only getting started and what she does will leave you speechless. Iyabo arrived unannounced, as she always did now, letting herself into the compound like she still owned it. "Ah, so this is the car," she said, circling it slowly, her fingers trailing over the bonnet. "Very nice, very, very nice." "Mama, good afternoon," Folasade said. Iyabo didn't return the greeting. My son buys a car for a wife of 2 months, but his own mother, who suffered for him for 28 years, has never even received a bicycle. She turned, eyes narrowed. Tell me, is that fair? Mama, it's not about fairness. Chibueke, I don't want your explanation, Iyabo snapped. I want what I am owed. Chibueke came out just in time to hear it, his shoulders sagging. Mama, please, let's not do this today. Do what? Iyabo rounded on him. Ask for respect in my old age? Since when did that become a crime? Folasade said nothing, but the tightness in her jaw betrayed her. She had built an empire out of holding her tongue in rooms full of powerful men. She could hold it here too. Barely. That night, lying beside Chibuete, she whispered into the dark. Your mother hates me, he said, though his voice lacked conviction. She hasn't called me by my name once, not once, Chibueke. He pulled her closer. Give her time. Time didn't help. If anything, it made it worse. Iyabo began visiting almost daily, letting herself into the kitchen, rearranging pots, cooking meals nobody asked for, then complaining when Folasade tried to cook her own. This is not how you make a foriro, Iyabo said one afternoon, nearly shoving Folasade aside with her hip. You people who grew up eating from restaurants don't know how food is supposed to taste. Mama, I know how to cook. Then why does your soup taste like water? Iyabo clicked her tongue. No wonder my son is losing weight. Folasade's hands trembled around the wooden spoon. She set it down carefully and walked out of the kitchen and found Chibueke in the sitting room. I need you to talk to your mother, she said, voice low but firm. Folasade, I am your wife, she said, each word deliberate. Not your mother's maid, not your competition, your wife. And I need you to remind her of that because I am running out of patience. Chibueke rubbed his temples. I'll talk to her. He didn't. Or he tried and it didn't matter. Because the following Sunday on the way to church, Iyabo yanked open the front passenger door before Folasade could sit. Move, Iyabo said simply. Excuse me? The front seat belongs to the elder in the family. Sit at the back. Folasade felt heat rush up her neck. She glanced at Chibueke, silently begging him to say something, anything. He only stared at the steering wheel, jaw tight, saying nothing. She swallowed her pride and walked to the back seat, her nails digging into her palm the entire ride. That evening, she found her voice. I am not the enemy here, Mama, she said, standing in the doorway of the guest room Iyabo now occupied more nights than not. I have never disrespected you, I have never raised my voice at you, but I will not be humiliated in front of strangers because you feel entitled to a place that is not being taken from you. Iyabo's eyes flashed. You dare to speak to me like that? I am speaking to you like a woman who deserves peace in her own home. Your own home? Iyabo repeated, laughing bitterly. You think because you have money you can just take my son and lock him away from me? I carried him for 9 months. I labored for him. What have you given him except a fancy house and empty pride? I have given him love, Folasade said, voice shaking now. The kind that doesn't come with conditions. Love? Iyabo spat the word like it tasted foul. You are stealing my son's affection with your love. Ever since you came, he barely visits me. Ever since you came, everything changed. That is not fair. Fair? Iyabo stepped closer, finger raised. Let me tell you what is not fair. watching another woman take everything I built with my bare hands and calling it hers. The argument spiraled, voices rising, old wounds tearing further open, until Iyabo, in her fury, stumbled backward over a stool she hadn't noticed. She fell hard, her head striking the corner of the wooden table, and for one terrifying second, the room went silent. "Mama!" Chibuike came running, Folasade already on her knees beside Iyabo, checking for blood, screaming for someone to call an ambulance. If you're not on the edge of your seat right now, wait for what happens at the hospital. But first, like this video and drop a comment telling me if you think Folasade did the right thing. At the hospital, Chibuike paced the hallway while Folasade sat beside Iyabo's bed alone, holding a damp cloth to her mother-in-law's forehead. The older woman drifted in and out of consciousness, mumbling things Folasade couldn't understand. When Iyabo finally opened her eyes fully, Folasade found her still there, still holding her hand. "Why?" whispered Iyabo, voice hoarse. "Why are you the one taking care of me?" Folasade didn't answer right away. She simply adjusted the blanket over Iyabo's shoulders and said, "Because despite everything, you are still his mother, and that makes you mine to care for too." Something in Iyabo's face cracked. Iyabo turned her face toward the window, blinking fast, but Folasade saw the tears anyway. "You don't understand," whispered Iyabo. "You think I hate you because of pride. It is not pride." "Then what is it, Mama?" For a long moment, Iyabo said nothing. The machines beeped softly beside her. Outside the door, Chibuike had gone quiet too, standing just out of sight, listening. "My husband," Chibuike's father, was a good man to everyone except me. He built houses for his brothers. He paid school fees for his sister's children. He smiled for the whole village. But for me, his wife, the one who bore his son, he had nothing. No car, no gift, not even a kind word in 20 years of marriage." Her voice broke. "I used to watch him give and give to everybody else, and I would ask myself, when is it my turn? When will someone look at me the way he looked at strangers?" Folashade's grip on her hand tightened. "Then I watched my son buy you a car after 2 months of marriage, and something inside me broke open. All that pain I buried for years came rushing back. It was not about you, Folashade. It was never about you. It was about a woman who spent her whole life waiting to be chosen and watching another woman get chosen so easily." Tears slid freely down Folashade's face now. "Mama, I didn't know." "How would you know?" Iyabo laughed weakly. "I never told anyone. I carried it alone the way I carried everything alone." Folashade leaned closer. "You are not alone anymore. Whether you believe it or not, you are my family now too. I didn't marry Chibuike to take him from you. I married him because I found a man who taught me that love doesn't have to be earned through suffering. And Mama, I want you to know that kind of love too. Not through a car or a gift, but through peace, through being seen." Iyabo's shoulder shook as she finally let herself cry, really cry, releasing decades of silent hurt in one hospital bed in front of the daughter-in-law she had fought so hard to resent. "I am sorry, Mama. I am so sorry, my daughter." Chibuike stepped into the room then, eyes wet, and knelt beside both women, taking his mother's hand in his. "Mama," he said gently, "I didn't know you felt this way. All these years, I thought you were strong because you never complained. I was strong because no one ever asked me if I needed to be." The weeks that followed were not perfect, but they were different. Iyabo still visited often, but she knocked now. She still had opinions about Eforero, but she taught rather than criticized. Slowly, carefully, the two women built something neither of them expected. Not friendship exactly, not yet, but respect. A shared understanding of what it meant to survive as a woman in a world that often overlooked them. One Sunday afternoon, as the family prepared to leave for church, Iyabo walked to the car, paused at the front passenger door,
and then without a word, opened the back door instead and slid inside. Folasade stood frozen for a moment before Chibuike gently nudged her toward the front seat. As they drove, Iyabo reached into her purse and pulled out a small velvet pouch. She placed it in Folashade's palm. "What is this?" Folasade asked, opening it to find a spare car key, one Iyabo had quietly had made. "So you know that when I hand you something now, it is not a demand, it is a gift, from one woman who finally understands another." Folashade's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were warm, healing tears. "Thank you, Mama." "No," Iyabo said, squeezing her hand. "Thank you for teaching an old woman that it is never too late to be loved the right way." Months later, sitting in her office overlooking the city she had built her empire in, Folashade often thought back to that day in the hospital, the day she learned that the loudest battles are rarely about what they seem. Behind every act of jealousy is often a wound nobody bothered to heal. Behind every difficult mother-in-law is sometimes a woman who spent her whole life waiting for someone, anyone, to finally choose her. Folashade had chosen to fight fire with fire once, but grace, she realized, had done what anger never could. It had turned an enemy into family. If this story touched you, don't scroll past without hitting that subscribe button and dropping a like, because more stories like this one are coming every single week. And before you go, tell me in the comments where you're watching this from tonight. I read every single one and I love seeing how far this family story has traveled.